Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest in our series of talks. We've had a few months break because of problems with websites and so on, but it's good to get going again. Tonight, I'm delighted to welcome Holly Stranks, FRPS, who's going to teach us, or talk to us rather, about her fellowship journey. And I believe that starts well before she gets to her fellowship. So I'll just hand over to you now, Holly, and all the best.
Thank you very much, Alan. Yes, I will be talking rather than teaching tonight. This is me. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the one in the middle. As we look at it on the left, the black dog is Pippa and Penny is the red Labrador. And so I say thanks to both them and Dave, my husband and dog wrangler, for all the help that they've given me for getting me my fellowship, because I couldn't have done it without them. I very much enjoyed the other talks that the contemporary group have ran with fellowship journeys, and I'm always fascinated by how people start out in their photography, and you know, it's lovely to see the progression. So that's very much how I formulated my talk, and hopefully you'll find it interesting to see how I've gone on in the sense or in the way that they talk of on Strictly Come Dancing, the journey, which is getting a bit of a cheesy thing these days, but I think it's very apt. So when I first got my very first dog, Zach, I was a young woman. I wasn't a child, as a lot of people are, and I didn't have anybody in the family that really was very much into photography. So this is very much my own sort of discovery that I've done myself. I can remember my mum taking pictures of us girls when we were younger, and we'd have our heads chopped off. So that was the sort of standard of photography that I come from in my background. But all I basically wanted to do was have a picture of my dog and then dogs on my desk while I was at work, so I could look at them. And this is what's driven me over the years to where I am today and carrying on, because we always move forward. So very much not only my photography itself, but also my editing skills and camera equipment has improved. And the cost of that camera equipment has frightened my husband, and explaining to him the benefits of moving over from DSLRs, Nikon DSLRs to Sony mirrorless system, and how much money was spent was, yes, a little bit of cajoling, but worth it for what I can do with that. I've got my own style. I think I like a very sort of real looking image. I always remember looking at the Sunday coloured supplements that would come and always being struck by the portraits, the studio shots, where the subject is in great detail with a black background. I found the drama of that very compelling, and I think that's what's influenced me, and very much why I enjoy dog photography, because the detail that you can get out of their fur. And yeah, I wasn't really the artistic one of the family. My two older sisters went to art college, and I did business studies, being sensible, and that did help because I got better income from it. But I do have an artistic streak, and can at least sort of unleash it now, and have achieved more with it than them. So these are some of my first images of Ben, my German Shepherd, and Cassie, who you'll see a lot more of. I think that was very much, well, she's very much a puppy there, but I think that was taken on one of these automatic cameras where you can't even choose your aperture or anything like that. It really was a point and shoot. So I had no idea how to deal with the image, and didn't know that the shutter speed was obviously far too slow and camera shake causing the wibbly wobbly image. And these are some others. that a lot of people, you see a lot of people take of their pets. They love them. They're not particularly interesting images and not very good angles. And there's some classic early shots of no engagement with the pets at all. The collie cross is Robbie, and yeah, Ben and Pippa, Cassie, you can see there as well. Starting to find a bit more humour with my images, with Cassie obliging by getting in the washing basket there. But other than that, some really very dire images, mobile phones by the looks of things as well, they were taken on. This little chap here is Jack, and I'm starting to get a bit better and think a bit more about composition here. And then these two, that's Cassie and Ben, and then Jack and Cassie in one of my favourite locations for a dog spot, Bluebell Woods. And every year I try to go to the Bluebell Woods, or do go, except for the first year of COVID, and take pictures of the dogs in the bluebells. In 2014, I joined the local camera club, Bungay. We're here in North Suffolk in the UK. And that was only when I felt I was good enough to join a camera club. And at that point, I had just started using a Nikon D7100. And I believe I had an 18-200 zoom lens. Very much move away from zooms these days. I'm very much a prime user. Still use some zooms, but the primes are my favourites. And joining the camera club, you get the benefits of the excuse me, the photo shoots set up with models coming along, and obliging with their dress and the studio lights, and having the dramatic looks here. I thought it would be interesting to drag out my first camera club competition entries, and these are local shots. There's not too many from the great world away from Suffolk. I tend to stick pretty well much close to home these days, but just so you can get an idea of where I was in the early days. And this one I put in because I started experimenting with Photoshop, or Photoshop elements as I had in those days, and spent hours erasing the colour from the layer with the black and white on, and didn't realise that if I'd used a layer mask, it would have been a lot easier and I wouldn't have to keep going back where I'd made mistakes. But we all learn, don't we? And then that's a rather oversaturated but a nice shot with Blytheborough Church in the background. And if you ever come up to Suffolk, that's the church on the A12 just before where they have the Latitude Festival. In my first year in the camera club, I'd actually got 2 first places, which I was delighted and slightly shocked with. But yes, very pleased. And I started with the Conkers, started using depth of field as well, although that was probably more of a happy accident than deliberate. And in Bungay Camera Club, we have, at that point, we had 2 or 3 others who were LRPSs, and with a few members of the club, we went along to a local advisory day or a workshop that was being done. And I thought, I hadn't joined the RPS at this point, but I thought I'd take some prints along to see what the assessor thought of them. And was actually told that I was very much nearly there to be considered for LRPS. So I thought, right, I'll join the RPS then, and book my assessment date, and then got very impatient having to wait for June, but very enthusiastic about it, nervous as anybody would be as well. But this was my LRPS panel, and that one, the first one there was my husband at a clay shooting ground. Again, more luck than judgment, didn't really know how to create the shot. I just swung the camera around and got a lucky grab shot there. This was a panning shot at Snetterton Racetrack. We've gone along again with Camera Club members to a day organised by WEX. We have WEX here in Norwich, which is only sort of a short drive away, and they quite frequently do trips to Snetterton, which is good fun. I don't go as often as I like, but I do enjoy motorsports. This is another one from a chap from one of the theme days and the sort of dressing up box style of photography. And again, more help from Angela Adams, the photographer who'd set up the day, and she was the one that organised all the lighting. So it wasn't all down to me and choosing the lighting there. And this is my Cassie, very much older than when you saw her as the puppy shots. And I'm always very keen, as you will see later on getting the eyes right with the dog. That's my main focus, getting the character of the dog. And I do find this a little cringeworthy now when I look at how I've over-processed the eye in order to bring it out. But again, we've all got to start somewhere. And this is a shot which is quite common for people that live up this way. This is Gerald's department store in Norwich at Christmas time. But one that I showed my skills of using correct shutter speed and exposure, which is obviously one of the criteria that we're looking for in the LRPSs. And this was yet another day out with the Camera Club. I'd organised a trip to a floating museum in Lowestoft, which is very close to us here. There's a trawler, one of the old fishing trawlers that you can go on and have a look round. And there were a couple of chaps who worked on the trawlers, and this is Alan, one of them, telling us all about the life at sea, which is really, really hard. And Alan had one of those great for photography faces, and he also was wearing a faded orange anorak, which is why the image became a mono. And this is at Corton, which is north of Lowestoft, and got a spectacular sunrise that morning. And I do very much like using long exposures at sea. If I'm not photographing dogs, I do enjoy photographing water. And if you put the two of them together, even better as far as I'm concerned. And there's more water. This time, this was taken in my kitchen, where I'd set up a sponge to have water drops going into my chip pan. And it's the chip pan that create the interesting little white flecks, those black chip pans with the white flecks in it. And this is a little bit further up the coast from the other long exposure sunrise shot. And this is the Min Carlo trawler itself. So that's the hanging plan, how they all came together, a mix of mono and colour. Made sure that all the tones and the tones of the colours worked well, and obviously the black and whites matched each other too. So once I'd done this, I started thinking, not straight away, I did wonder about doing an ARPS, I was keen on it, and wanted to do it on dogs. So I did in October 2019, put in an applied panel and duly failed. I'd initially thought that because of the black or predominantly dark backgrounds where I had the pet portraiture, where I just wanted to draw the attention to the animals themselves, I thought that that might fit into fine art. However, I'd gone along on yet another advisory day in the East Anglian region and was told that they felt that I was probably more likely to fit into the applied category. Well, I didn't know what the applied category was or what it meant, but I sent off, 6 images to Andy Moore at the distinctions team for them to decide which category I should be in, and it came back that I should go into applied. So I did have some advisory days, sorry, not advisory days, I did have some one-to-ones, which were the old ones where you didn't know who the assessor was, and you just got some written notes, which wasn't very helpful. But I tried my best, and this was a statement of intent that I had. My area of speciality is dog photography in an indoor environment. To bring out a dog's individual character, I use low-key lighting to increase the drama of the image whilst maintaining its simplicity. I started off by taking photos of my own dogs and was soon asked by family and friends to take photos of their loved ones. It gives me both joy and a sense of satisfaction to know that others take pleasure from my work. I didn't really sort of understand, I totally didn't understand the significance and the importance of the statement of intent, and never really felt comfortable being in the applied category either. Unfortunately, I didn't know enough about contemporary then to have even considered going in for contemporary for my ARPS. That might have fitted better. But I got the written feedback from the chair, which, if you know you've done, every failed attempt gets. And the main comment, there was too much repetition in the panel and some of the images were not up to ARPS standard. I was encouraged to try again, and this time with more or different faces, different canine subjects, and to vary my set props and situations and viewpoints. I was told that some of them were good for a strong applied submission, which I was pleased about, and I've got a slide showing you which ones those were. So I tried again, and by this point we'd got the one-to-ones via Zoom, which was so much better. As you well know, if any of you have taken part, you can actually speak to the person who's looked at your work and ask all sorts of questions. So it's so much more helpful. And I was lucky, I was put in touch with Paul Walker, who's a great dog photographer. He's an FRPS. He's a great professional dog photographer. And these, you'll see through the talk, when I show you slides, you will know instantly which ones were the good ones and which ones I didn't like. For example, number 4, one of Pippa, the reason that one was not considered up to the mark was because there was too much lost shadow detail in her face, which I was slightly cross with. I understood, but I was slightly cross with because that was the look I was trying to achieve. I didn't put that in my statement of intent, which I understand now. Perhaps if I had, I could have, then the assessors would have understood why I was using that particular photograph. But the other ones might not have been up to the standard. For example, number 10, the red dog, they felt she had an odd colour cast. Number 13, the little terrier, too much post-production could be seen as evident. And I think the others were just generally not considered to be up to the standard. So I then resubmitted, I've got the date, is in 2020, and this is my successful panel, which hopefully you can see looks much better than the unsuccessful one. What is the statement of intent and why is it so important? This slide I left in from when I was doing the talk with camera clubs. But I thought that hopefully there will be a lot of you that will still be interested in why it, or my thoughts about why it's so important. As you well know, both ARPS and FRPS have to have a written statement of intent, 150 words for all genres except for contemporary, where we're allowed up to 300 words. And the idea is that you tell the assessors your aim and the intention of your panel of images. It's not how you took the images, but why you took them. I think a lot of people sometimes make the mistake that, and I have done when I've written draft statements of intent, that you explain how you took the images. You know, I did it in mono because I wanted to show this, or I set the camera up in this way, I use lighting, etc., etc. And that isn't really what the statement of intent is about. A poorly written statement of intent can affect your assessment detrimentally. However, a brilliantly written one will not pass you if the images are not up to the mark. And I do think that's only quite right. I mean, after all, we are the Royal Photographic Society. I've often had it explained to me that the assessors will listen to the statement of intent and then imagine what images that they expect to see. And that the images should reflect what they've just heard. And really, really important, if you mention something in the statement of intent, it must be seen in the images. All of your images should link to the statement of intent. So here is my new statement of intent for the ARPS that I took in October 2020. The aim of my canine portraiture is to capture images for clients that will have longevity for them and that they will love and cherish. To achieve this, I like to photograph the dogs in their own homes where they feel most relaxed and secure. As anyone who owns or works with dogs will know, they will only be directed so much, and they have their own ideas about how a photography shoot will go. This can present a challenge, but also the opportunity to observe and capture characteristics of the individual dogs, despite their different levels of interaction. I was able to capture endearment, interest, alertness, pride, a readiness to play, and an ability to sit still to their owner's command. The dogs also showed me their calmer sides with contentment in togetherness, wandering attention, total relaxation, and even sleep. So really sort of stating what's in the images with the statement of intent there. This is Archie. This is Tia, who belongs to David, one of the Camera Club members who I see is here tonight. So hello, David. This is my boy Jack, who's sadly no longer with us, but he's a great lover of big bears. So that was nice for me to include that one there. That's Cassie, my girl, who also sadly no longer with us, and that was taken on her 13th birthday, when she's looking very proud. And that's Nina, my sister's dog, who again is sadly no longer with us. And this is a friend's dog, Daisy. And this is Gilbert, a very proud Dachshund. There's Jack, my boy. And that's Pippa, who you'll see a lot more of later on. She is the boss. Cassie again, knowing only too well how to sleep and relax. And this one I did discuss with Paul Walker. He loved it. And we both agreed that leaving the little hairs on the bed was the correct decision, rather than trying to Photoshop them out, as it just shows that it is a dog's bed where they truly relax. This is Scary Finch, appropriate for 31st of October, I think. He is quite a dude. He certainly knows how to stare at you. That's Pippa and Jack. We're going for different angles there. And obviously a wide angle lens used there. And what Pippa's looking up at is Dave is stood behind me on a sofa holding up bits of chicken. And I think Jack is just saying, come on, Mum, get the blooming picture done so we can have our chicken. And there's Pippa with her ball that she and Penny fight over all the time. And there's Pippa and Jack. And they absolutely were wonderful that day. They were cuddling on the sofa and they allowed me to take the picture. That was focus stacked, where I focused first on one dog and then the other. They wouldn't have been able to get the nice falling off of the sofa if that had been taken at f11 or something like that. They wouldn't have had the same characteristics at all. And that is Pippa's litter brother, Piran, who we're friends with, who also have another dog that is the litter sister of Penny, who you will see later on as well. And that's just a reminder again of the ARPS panel. And this is the halfway point. If we have any questions, I we'll wait and see what Sean has to say.
Yeah, hi. I'm going to ask the question that's on my mind straight away, with the two dogs lounging on the sofa. You said you photo stacked.
Yes.
How many images did you manage to grab without them moving?
With shooting more than one dog, I do this technique quite a lot. And I just take as many images as I can and then choose the best ones. To sometimes Photoshop will merge them together for me. Other times it's a case of doing it manually and masking. But yes, I try and take as many as possible. And fortunately these days with the Sony system, I'm lucky enough to have a Sony A1, and that is great with the eye autofocus, but I still have to, using shallow depths of field, I still have to move the focal point from one dog to the other. It's not, I think some cameras do focus stacking in camera. That would be a dream for me, but then perhaps that would be too easy, and it's, as some people call it, cheating.
Perhaps. Yeah. It kind of leads on to another question that was in my mind as well. With the L, are you still using Photoshop elements, or are you still using Photoshop elements, or have you moved on?
Sorry, your line went a bit. I'll tell you what, I'll put that there so we're not just looking at the slide. That's it.
Yes, so when we, but when talking about the L, you were talking about using Photoshop elements before that. Were you, or are you still using that, or have you moved?
No. I've full Photoshop now. Use that quite extensively, and luminosity masks I use a great deal. I use Greg Ben's Lumenzia, the Nick collection, and Topaz Denoise I use an awful lot of as well.
Yeah, as well. Yeah. So the only other thought I've got is we haven't actually got any other questions, but the question that I've written down is that comment about the assessor's understanding of your intent in a statement intent. I think that is something where most of us come unstuck first time. And it's so difficult to have a photograph talk and tell the assessors what it was you were trying to do.
And even though I've been successful with my ARPS, it was joining the fellowship peer support group and listening to some of the people that are here today, like Carol and Keith, with their advice and experience and interpretation of statement of intents. That's when it's good to have a pool of minds together helping you. To try and do it on your own is incredibly difficult.
I have a question, Sean, if I may.
Go for it.
What I found when I was doing my one-to-one before my A, and I'm sure I suppose I'm talking about my own talk in a few weeks, did you find you had any images that you felt really attached to, which you were persuaded to change?
Yes, I mean, that is the great difficulty of doing pictures of your own dogs. I think they're all marvellous until somebody points out otherwise. And it's very difficult. And again, that's why it's great to have the one-to-ones, and it's great to have the peer support help. And there were some images that I hadn't considered that would be correct. for my fellowship, we'll come on to, that I was encouraged to reconsider. I think one where there's a shot of the girls running away from the camera, which I know is at number 7 in the final panel. I put that in as an afterthought. And that was Keith who said to me, or said to us as a group, I love that image. As a dog owner myself, it's, you know, what you see and enjoy when you let them off the lead and they just go and do their own thing. And that did get mentioned in the assessment as well as one of the images that was good, as you know, from the whole group for telling the story.
That's, yeah, really good, really important to get a good image that helps hold it together. Oh, there we are. That was it. There hasn't been any other questions, so perhaps we move on.
Could I throw a quick question in? Do you mind?
Please
Ollie,
do.
hi, it's David here.
Hello, David.
Just a quick question about the statement of intent. Do you write your statement of intent and then photograph to that statement, or do you take your photographs and then write the statement of intent to see the photographs?
There's all different schools of thought on that. I formulated the plans in my mind, initial seeds of ideas. There are other people who write the statement of intent and then go and take the photographs. There are people that write the statement of intent afterwards and write it to the photographs. Certainly the case in my ARPS, both the statements of intent, I think certainly when I was reading the second one, the successful one back, it occurred to me just how much I was actually describing the panel. Excuse me. This was done with discussion with Paul Walker, and he'd seen the statement of intent and was okay with it. But it's almost as if I was literally looking at every single picture and thinking, right, that dog's doing that, I'll include that particular characteristic in it. So that, well, I'm sure that didn't win the prize for the best statement of intent ever. I'm happy and proud of my ARPS, but it isn't really me as how I am as a photographer. My fellowship, I really do feel very proud of, and the statement of intent is very much about me, and I think this is why it works, me and the dogs and how they help me. And yes, you'll see in a minute, as I'm just about to go on with.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Got one more question coming from Roger. He's asking about when we make a burst of shots for taking dogs in action. Yeah, what's been your success rate in getting action shots?
Again, thank you to the Sony Corporation. But I've always enjoyed action shots, but as both my own techniques and kit have got better, and my success rate gets better, but it isn't at the 99.9% success rate that some YouTubers will say you have. Conditions, what the dogs are doing, what your background is, your own movement have an awful lot of impact on how quickly, or sorry, how many keepers you get. I would say that my success rate is pretty high these days, mainly down to the equipment. So then instead of pixel peeping, which I am somebody that does every single image, I go through my culling process. Say I've been doing some action shots of the dogs, I could quite easily come back with 1,000 images or more, because I've got a high frame rate on the camera. And then my culling will be more about the images that actually, as well as being totally in focus and exposed correctly, but are doing something. There's a silly expression on their face, or are just about to enter the water, or they have entered the water, you know. So it's, as I say, it is about the equipment, but I suppose it is also about knowing the experience of how the light is landing on your subjects and what the background is, what they're doing, how fast they're running, etc., how many dogs I'm trying to photograph. At the weekend, I was trying to photograph 4 dogs because we met up with the other 2, the brother and sister of my little pair behind me. So that's always interesting on a dull day in a wood. And that is where I would use Topaz denoise because I was shooting very high ISO. But again, modern technology, modern software makes you feel quite comfortable. In the days when I was starting my ARPS, my camera was permanently on ISO 100 because I thought, oh, I don't want any noise in my images. Now I shoot auto ISO between 100 and 12,800 as standard. And if it's grainy, then it's grainy and I'll try another picture. But, you know, if the software can't sort it out. But you'll see some action shots. Sure.
Right.
I think we need to move on, Holly.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. So this was my first hanging plan that I sent to Paul Walker again, because when I started thinking about doing my fellowship, I had an idea that I wanted to do it as the first year of Penny's life with us. Just next slide. I did a 365 project with both Pippa and Penny, and particularly it was great doing it with Pippa because she was the first black dog I'd ever had. And I basically taught myself how to take pictures of a black dog, particularly with 2 yellow dogs. So as soon as we got Penny in November 2020, so just coming up for 2 years, I knew that I was going to be taking the 365 of her, and I thought, oh, I wonder if I'll be able to get an FRPS out of it. But it was going to be very much along the idea of chronological. So, and again, because I'd done the ARPS and applied, I thought, well, I'll be doing the FRPS and applied. But that was Paul that said it was too broad to do it as a whole year's project and it needed to be firmed up, which I thought was a bit ironic because the ARPS needed more variety. Now I'm got too much variety. And Alexandra contacted me around about this time because I was compiling the digital imaging group Accolade magazine, which online magazine, which celebrates everybody's distinctions in the digital imaging group. And Alexandra, I think, wanted to put an article about the peer support group. And I thought, well, this sounded like an interesting group. So I went along. And I can't remember if it was the first time or the second time I went. I presented my work to the group and I was ever so nervous, which I think everybody is when they first present. But everybody was really lovely, very, very helpful. And everybody wants people to achieve their fellowship. So the advice and help is always to that end, and everybody well-meaning in it. And with the group's help and with the one-to-ones that I've had with Richard Brayshaw, FRPS, and a lot of hard work, I can now have FRPS after my name. And as Alexandra's moved on to new ventures, it's Carol and myself that are carrying on running the group. It's nice to be able to sort of give something back. So I got to this panel with the help of the group, and the statement of intent was just sort of running along the lines of how the dogs help me in my life, as I have an autoimmune disease, and going out and walking them every day ensures that I get my body moving and don't just sit home and do nothing. and my little smiley faces and sad faces. After the one-to-one with Richard, these were the ones that he very much liked and the ones that he definitely weren't up to standard. So these were his main observations. The statement of intent meets the criteria, give us a good sense. The work shows a strong, consistent style, well executed technique, but that old thing again, repetition. He suggested shots showing the sense of movement to balance the action shots, likes number 11, the middle shot, and the light appearing to radiate from the dog. The sense of movement was in contrast to what I was putting a lot of in. I like the freezing the action. He likes those as well, but he wanted the balance. So a bit more panning and some kind of sense of movement in the images. He said that they showed a strong technical skill, but suggested to use it more widely. And the proposed layout of a day in the life of the dogs was starting to emerge as well. But are all the images distinctive enough? Number 16 and 20 are not. And Richard suggests I look at other successful L panels in all the genres to see what makes images distinctive. And through the peer support group, with feedback that I've heard from other people that have had one-to-ones with Richard, I think he suggests this with everybody. But I mean, it's a good suggestion. Just made me smile. So there again, you can see the ones that he liked and didn't like. And number 18, for example, that was an idea that I had. I've got a bit of sense of movement with the food, but it was too basic, too obviously done in the kitchen, wrong angles. Number 16, he didn't like. I suppose that was very much a sort of an average shot of somebody's pet. Likewise with number 15. So I'd now, after a couple of months, I think 2 or 3 months, had worked on the panel and had some more meetups with the group, the fellowship group. And there's number 7, the one that Keith suggested that I use. And number 15, I've got the sense of movement. That's actually in the final panel. You'll be able to see that. And number 17, full screen. So I'm getting more approval from Richard, but still some that aren't quite up to the mark. One of his main comments was, say, number 1. He wanted more shots where I was actually at the dog's angle. And number 13, which I always enjoyed, he didn't like that one because, again, it wasn't at the dog's viewpoint. And on the second one-to-one, the feedback, the way the feedback was given had changed. I don't know if anybody's done it recently, but now I understand that, or as I'd done then, you take the notes and send the notes to Richard and he'd endorse them. And I always thought that was a bit odd. It was a bit like what he used to have to do at work, where you write your own assessment, really, and your supervisor agrees or disagrees. I preferred the format where you had the report sheet back in the different areas and was told where you'd gone wrong or where you'd gone right. Statement of intent was more or less squared away by this point. And the images that he likes are listed there. I've made a significant step forward with photographer input. And still concerned about some of the images and about, are they distinctive enough? And that was a bit of a head scratcher, trying to work out, really, it's a bit of elusive trying to work out what is a distinctive photograph. I'd come a long way in summary, but I have to ask of each image, How does this image convey the emotion in my message? And is the image distinctive enough? Again, that was where we were with the second one-to-one. From start to finish, I had about 12 different hanging plans from my fellowship and about 6 different statements of intent. And I shared my work with the peer support group, I think about 3 or 4 occasions, which every single time was fantastically helpful. I had the statement of intent 1-to-1 and 2 full 1-to-1s with Richard Brayshaw, which is what you can do for each genre and each application. I would encourage anybody to do that. And after my last 1-to-1 with Richard, I thought, this is it. If I want to be a fellow, I've got to make my own decisions about this panel. I can't keep asking others for help. Although it's always very well-meaning, you can start to get a bit of conflicting advice as you're honing in towards the end. So that was it. I went solo, as I put there. When I sent my submission off for my assessment, I had 8 changes to the panel from the last 1-to-1. So on one hand, I felt bold about this and confident, and on the other hand, I was very nervous. I thought, had I been too bold? And that is the final panel. And these were the new images, the 8 new images, together with the ones that had been cropped in on Richard's suggestion. So that was how I felt on the big day. I very, very nervous. I think I'd spent virtually every night, months, as I went to sleep, thinking about the panel. And all of a sudden, here was the assessment day. And Dave was watching it with me. From the very start, the comments were mainly positive, but I kept a lid on myself. I didn't want to get too much hope up. And I was writing notes, which my hands were shaking so much. How I managed to read the notes afterwards, I do not know. But I was thinking, if I failed, although I'd get the feedback, I wanted to get every single sort of utterance made by the assessors so that I could know where I'd gone wrong. However, I didn't need to worry about that because I got all 5 assessors give me the positive vote. And Tessa, who was the chair on the day, Tessa Mills, said in her summing up, this panel gives us a day in life of the dogs, a rhythm in the panel. There is a rhythm in the panel. The colours have been sensibly handled, the blue towel with the sky. The greens can be an issue, but well handled here. Good angles of the dogs. She loved number 7 with the sense of joy of the dogs running away. And it was photography done lovingly. And it was a joyous panel giving us joy. So that was actually, fantastic to hear that. And here is my statement of intent. Living vicariously through my 2 dogs. Through illness, I am no longer able to do the things that I used to enjoy. This panel shows how I live life vicariously through my dogs, Pippa and Penny. We take them to where we relax, out in the countryside where they can explore and have fun. They are free to run, jump, swim and play, sometimes with friends, while we enjoy the outdoors. When at home, I get a sense of peace and inner calm through their relaxation. My dogs make me happy. Their pleasure in life rubs off on you. They love unconditionally. They live in the now. They love activity and adventure, and they take me with them. They don't have the worries of the world on their shoulders. Once exercised and fed, they're happy to relax at home and take it easy. My dogs aid me greatly in different ways in my life. Since being diagnosed with a progressive autoimmune disease and being forced to take ill health retirement, their place in my life has become even more important, and without any exaggeration, keeps the quality of my life as good as it can be. The presence of dogs in my life ensures that I get out of bed each morning to walk them with my husband, as I can no longer do this alone. They demand that exercise, and that ensures I don't give in to my illness and stay at home. Without doubt, my mobility and mental health would be worse without that commitment. My aim is to show you with images captured on various occasions a typical day in the life of our best friends. When outside, they're full of fun. When back home, they relax. This shows their enjoyment and the love I have for them. And I managed to squeeze that in with just one word to spare. So here's image number 1. And this is a composite of 2 images where I'd gone with the intent of taking precisely this style of photograph back to the same location with the original one that Richard wanted, a better angle of the dogs. And on the first occasion, I managed to get the good sky, but I wasn't happy with the way the dogs were. So we went back the very next day with Dave having to hold up a flash gun with a softbox on it so I could get a little bit of light on the dogs. And that was quite a challenge in Photoshop, and it took me quite a bit of time to merge the 2 together so it didn't look like they were merged together. So I'm very pleased with this one. And that's Pippa doing what she loves best, being outside, being soaking wet and having fun. Penny, panning shot. This time of year, when I was standing in a ditch and they were wondering what the hell I was doing in the ditch with their poppies on. And this one is that when Penny was quite young, doing her Sid the Sloth from Ice Age movie impression here. And there's again Pippa enjoying the water. And number 7, the running away shot. And this is where we're joined by Peggy with the pink collar and Piran, Pippa's brother. Peggy is Penny's brother. We thought it was a great idea that all the dogs were named after a letter P, which is great fun until you've actually got to try and say all their names all at once. And this is a shot that I hadn't even considered for the panel, but when Richard was saying about how we want a sense of movement to put this in. And again, a bit of fun, that's play fighting in the garden. Penny enjoying the water as she always does. And this is where the way that this shot was achieved was Pippa is actually in the background. She was just behind Penny's shoulder, and there was a little bit of Pippa, black dog, in the background, but that was taken out in Photoshop to give this sort of sense of the water radiating from Penny. It's just the 2 of them. I do love getting sneaky eyes peeking through things. And this is one of the shots that Richard suggested in the style of. And I remember that I took this on New Year's Eve. That must have been last year, New Year's Eve. Beautiful light, really lovely. And Penny didn't want to use the foot ramp to get up into the back of the car. And this is another very popular shot where you can actually see Dave and myself reflected in Pippa's eye. And when I've talked about doing Photoshop, a great deal of Photoshop, people have asked me, did I put the reflection in the eye? No, this was taken, excuse me, we were just out on a walk and I turned round and took this shot. And I think the thing that makes this shot, apart from the reflection in the eye, was the crop. I did a very bold crop with this one. And I do very much believe that cropping is one of the most important tools of editing. And this is another one which shows photographer input. In other words, how am I going to get lots of different images of dogs? Well, dogs love their muddy walks, and that's certainly summed up in this one. And the towel caused quite a bit of discussion among the assessors, with one of them not particularly liking the towel, saying, oh, perhaps it'd be better if it was desaturated more. Well, I'd already desaturated it quite a lot, and I was thinking, oh, please don't fail me on that. But fortunately, that didn't turn out to be a problem. This is one of my favourites as well. I tried doing this idea of the food tumbling into their big container where we keep their food on lots of different occasions, and I wanted a plain background. So this was actually taken in our conservatory where we have plain magnolia wall rather than in the kitchen. And I tried after this because I was a bit concerned about the ugly plastic bowl. And this was one that did cause me a lot of worry before the assessment. But I decided that what was really making this shot was the girls' looks, you know, Penny looking up at the food and Pippa intently staring as it going in. So, and again, my decision paid off. And this is a set-up shot with Dave just behind Penny to grab the biscuits before she could eat them. And I didn't want the risk of hot coffee or tea going everywhere, so there was no steam in this cup. And I recreated that by taking some pictures of steaming water later on. I had to end up doing it in the garage because that was really difficult to try and get that to work, but I was determined that all the images in the panel would be my own, and quite rightly that's the way it should be. I wasn't going to just Google some steam and paste it in. And this was far easier to do because all we had to do was cook some bacon, and that way you get full dog's attention. And after my last one-to-one with Richard, I was thinking, right, how can I get some more pictures? He wants to see some at dog's point of view. And as I came out of the one-to-one, Penny was lying in her bed. And so I just laid on the floor and took this shot. And I think that shows very much what I enjoy about the accuracy and sort of realistic look of my style of photography, where you can count every single hair on a head and the sort of pin sharp eyes. And this one of Pippa was when she was very young, and it's actually the first image or the earliest image taken in the panel. And I did initially have it in my ARPS panel, but it was suggested that probably, although it was a lovely picture, not to have it in the ARPS panel because it would have been the only one where the dog's eyes were shut. But fortunately, I could use it in this, and it works ever so well. We're getting towards the end of the panel, and they're gone through their active, adventurous day to settling down. And then there's the last image. It shows their contentment and love for each other. And again, all the detail in their fur and noses. And there we are. That's my fellowship panel. The day in the life of Pippa and Penny. This is just left over really from my camera club talks. But, I'll just quickly go through this. Just a few of the stats taken from this year's AGM. And these are some of the publications that I've been in the RPS magazines. And now I shall quickly show you, you're keen to look, no doubt like the dogs are, at some of my other styles of photography to prove that I can take things other than dogs. So here's another one at Snetterton. What I'd really like to be doing is being a Formula One photographer, but my life didn't pan out that way, and I wouldn't really want to be flying all around the world now anyway. Live near Southwold, so unsurprisingly, I'll take quite a few seascapes at Southwold. but these are a different view of Southwold. And the image on the left is at Felixstowe, near the docks, and the other one is at Walberswick, which is just the other side of Southwold. And that's Cromer Pier. We're very lucky living here with some of the views that we get. And it's back to Southwold again. And there's Southwold Pier. This is Norwich Cathedral. And the cloisters at Norwich. These are both at Norwich. Architecture and street photography. And that's inside an arcade in Norwich. A little bit of wildlife photography. I put this one in because I'm afraid of snakes, and I'm proud to say that my photographer's instinct kept me taking photographs rather than running away. And just some pretty flowers. And this one has done me well in photography competitions. I also enjoy, when I get the time, a bit of focus stacking. Because again, it feeds very much into my desire to have pin sharp, accurate images. Pretty cornflowers. When I'm doing all my editing, this is what Dave gets up to, with his cousin Martin helping him. Poor old Martin's waiting for a hip operation. That's why he's got a walking aid. They are cheaper still than having photography as a hobby, although a bit more swearing involved in restoring them. And I like this portrait of Martin because it's very natural. Rather, if I told him to come inside while I set up some lights, he'd be all fidgety, but this one catch him just right. And this one of Dave, I called this one, "Oh bugger, what am I going to do now?" He's trying desperately to fix an oil pump. And of course, some great landscapes here in East Anglia, nice wide open spaces. And I've still managed to get Dave and the dogs in this picture. Dunwich Forest and a foggy morning on our normal dog walk. And this is my version of a selfie. And we've got a friend who has some fishing lakes nearby, and he lets me go and take photographs there. You can see it's a beautiful location. And some more early mornings, one at Woodbridge. And that's me. So, thank you very much, everybody. And I'll put up this slide.
Oh, actually, before I actually do the finishing slides, I noticed Keith certainly had a question for us. Sean, do you want to do that, or?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's actually a couple. So this is in order. So another one from Roger was asking about the challenge of photographing a black dog. He's got a flat coat retriever. I'm not sure what that is. I'm assuming it's a dog. Would welcome any tips. So yeah, photographing anything black, I think, is always a challenge for us.
Yes, as I say, I did the 365 project with Pippa as I started that very much in mind. And I started to understand that the best way to photograph a black dog is to expose for the subject and forget about the background and just expose for your subject. And also it's about processing, bringing up the shadows, not too much so that you lose the look of the black dog. But I don't know what editions of Photoshop or Affinity or whatever programs people have, but with the texture and clarity sliders in Lightroom, I always use them on any coloured dog's fur. This helps a great deal. That keeps the contrast but brings out the detail. So I would say that it can be a challenge when you introduce other coloured dogs, but sometimes it's exposed for one dog, it's exposed for, say, a yellow Labrador who are very bright, and then take another shot exposing for the black Labrador or black dog. It's a matter of playing around depending on where, are you indoors, are you outdoors? If I'm using flash, I'm a great fan of using bounce flash off the ceiling, unless you want something very specific with your flash, and then you might put stands on. But just for general go-to photography, a bounce flash is a great thing. Yeah.
Right. Keith Lunchbury, you have a
Yes.
point to offer. Do you want to offer it verbally?
Yes, yes. When Holly said, as we know, the panelists read the statement, and then we can imagine them closing their eyes and thinking about imagining what they're going to see or would hope to see. And that made me think on. And when we come back to Holly's statement of intent and look at that last sentence, the clarity of that last sentence. So my point is to put an emphasis really on how important I think the final sentence in your statement of intent is. Simple, clear, to allow that imagination then to come forth crystally. And then, of course, they see your images. And hopefully the two are going to be a good match.
That really does underline it. Yes, I hadn't thought of it like that before, but yes, if you can get the last sentence to say something like that.
If you do flash up your statement of intent, we just look at that last sentence. Whenever I see statements of intents now, which are near fellowship submission, I will look at the last sentence and say, have we got that right?
Just getting it up. There we go. Just move myself out of the way. There you go.
Simple and sweet.
Yeah, enjoyment and love. Very good.
Thank you. Shall I stop screen sharing now? Would you want that last?
Well, for the moment, just stop screen sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
While we finish the questions.
There we go.
Yeah. So another question is about did you consider including some of the shots of your interactions in the panel with the dogs, of course?
Yes, I did consider it but for about 5 minutes because how do you do it? How many do you include? What are you doing? I didn't really want to be in it very much myself. I know Dave wouldn't have wanted to be in it very much himself. I like the way it works. There's a hint of us in one image, and that's good enough for me.
Okay, great. And another question from Roger. What's your favourite prime lens?
Oh, that's very easy. My Sony 50mm f1.2 lens. If I had to give up all the other lenses, that would be the one I'd keep. Gorgeous lens.
Grand. Yeah. Okay, well, the rest of the questions are really just comments saying thank you. Everyone's really saying how much they got out of this and you know, how impressed they are with the work and how informative it is about living with the dogs.
Great, thank you very much. It's very difficult doing a talk like this when you can't interact with the audience. So that's good to know that people enjoyed it. Good. Someone's getting a phone call.
Yeah, I just dealt with that. Grand. Well, thank you, Alan.
Did you want me to get the other slide up?
Well, I think if people may have seen it already, don't worry about it. So the next talk, I think, is 17th of November. We're still having challenges with the RPS website, so please, as with this one, book it using the links on Eventbrite. If you search for RPS Contemporary on Eventbrite, you'll find us. And there are links on the Facebook page of the group as well, if you're on Facebook. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Holly. That was great. If those of you want to see me telling a similar story, but with not quite such spectacular finish to it, we're on in a few weeks' time. So thank you very much, everybody, and good night to you all. And thanks, Holly.
Thank you, everyone. Just starting to look at the comments. Thank you very much. You're very kind.
Thanks.
I'm looking forward to Alan's talk as well. I'm booked on it. So see you all then.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.